So going back to our example where we see our beginning work in process with a number of units here. So again, we could copy this down to go through this process here. But so then if we have our beginning work in process, we have our units were 100. So then what we need to know is what is our direct material completion percentage and our conversion cost completion percentage. And so if we were, again, this is information that you'd have to either be observing the production process or you would need to be, given this information. And since we're not in the factory itself right now, we're going to be, be provided this information. So the beginning work in process, we had 100 units that were 30% complete with regard to direct materials, 40% complete with regard to conversion costs. And then we would then need to go through the process in terms of units that were completed and transferred out. And so that would be our 2600 here. And so if they're completed, and I'm sorry, 2600 here, I need to hit enter there. So if they're completed or transferred out, well then that would mean that they are 100% complete. And so then units that are an ending work in process, we have our ending work in process here, and our units then would be 500. So, and so then the degree of completion here, we have 15% and 20%. So there's a couple different methods in terms of figuring out the equivalent units. And so the first method that is done is what's known as the weighted average approach. And so what the weighted average approach does is that it aggregates the costs based on, so it does the allocation or equivalent unit calculation uses only units accounted for. So that means that we would be using these rows here and ignoring what's in the beginning inventory, beginning work in process. So our under weighted average, the equivalent unit calculation, so we would say our equivalent units are EU not EY, the accounting firm, EU. So what we would do is we would take each unit and then multiply that by the relative state of completion. So the 2600 multiplied by the 100% plus the 500 in ending inventory multiplied by the 15%. And so then we would end up with 2675. So hitting F2, we can open that back up. So we see that this is the number of equivalent units under the weighted average approach. Now, so that's 2675. So now if we wanted to calculate this for conversion costs, and we do, we're inspired to do so, what we could do is we could go through and manually do this sort of formula. What I'd like to do is, if we're using the same units here, go back into the formula, hit the F4 key one time, it will do an absolute cell reference for the things that we do not want to be moving. And so that would be the units but we want the relative completion, so we then can drag the formula over, and we get the 2,700 for the conversion costs. So these would be the equivalent units that would be used to then ultimately, so now what we've done is we've accounted for the costs, accounted for the units, but now we still need to do something with the costs, and that's what we'll do in the next video.